and a glass of wine or some water. And more importantly, it's a great privilege for me to welcome David to spend time with us. He's been with us all weekend. We had a treat this morning. He presided and preached the Mass this morning, and we've had a good time actually over the last couple of days renewing friendship, which goes back quite a long way. But it's very wonderful to welcome you to Melbourne and Brunswick, and we look forward to the
Just jumping in by checking the microphone. I think that's working. Thank you, Lindsay, very much for the welcome. It's lovely to be here. I love talking about the time in Rome, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about the ecumenical hope that exists in this pontificate and the hope that is in us and between us as denominations. I feel I'm among some friends. I recognise some people I've known before. Certainly Canon David Richardson, my predecessor in Rome, and I see other friends and colleagues from different times. It's wonderful to be here. I was reminded of the time I was in when I heard a story of a New Zealand and Australian bishop, Catholic bishops, who were walking in St. Peter's Piazza. They had a nice pizza, glass of bread, a glass of Umbrian red, and it was a very enjoyable evening, full moon, and they were feeling conversational, and they went for a walk into the colonnade area where they encountered a Swiss guard. And this particular Swiss guard, I think his English was his third language. And the Australian Catholic bishop said to him, in a friendly way, "G'day, how are you going?" And the Swiss guard, very precisely looking straight ahead, said, "I'm not going anywhere." And then the bishop said, this bishop told me the story himself, he said, "Oh, okay, where are you from?" And the Swiss guy looked straight ahead and said, "I'm from Switzerland." But then went for a little bit longer walk, and they came across another Swiss guy. And the Kiwi bishop said to the Swiss guard, "Oh, I've just been talking to your mate over here, and he's from Switzerland. Where are you from?" And the guard said, "Switzerland." And then the Aussie bishop said, "How are you going?" And the Swiss guard said, "I'm not going anywhere." But that is a way of introducing you perhaps to His Holiness Pope Francis in a particular way, and the way in which I want to share this evening, 5 years or 4.5 years at least, alongside this pontificate on behalf of the Anglican Communion. The Pope, on day 3 of his pontificate, was in the Santa Marta Hospital where he chose to live, not in the Apostolic Palace. First time the Pope has done that. And he's there on the 2nd floor, and the rooms are the same as any other room, except there's a Swiss guard standing outside. My Swiss guard story leads into this. And on day 3, the Pope said to the Swiss guard standing outside his room, "Why don't you sit down and I'll make us a sandwich?" And I don't think the Pope has ever said that to the Swiss guard before, but the Swiss guard, looking straight ahead, said, "Your Holiness, I'm afraid I can't. I have to remain here on duty, standing on duty. I have my orders." And the Pope, quite genuinely, exploring the rules, I suppose, for the first time, said to the Swiss guard, "Oh, what a pity. I'd like to get to know you. I like making lunch for people. But who gave you the orders?" And the Swiss guard said, looking straight ahead, "Well, the captain of the Swiss guard gave me the orders, Your Holiness." And the Pope said, out of genuine curiosity, "Who gives the captain of the Swiss guard his orders?" And the Swiss guard said, after a pause, "Well, that would be you." And the Pope said, "Sit down." I'm making a sandwich. So they go. But I'm telling you these stories for a purpose, that what this pontificate is trying to demonstrate and trying to witness to is a Franciscan simplicity and humanity and humility, which I think is producing a very gentle kind of revolution of grace in not only the Catholic Church, but also amongst other denominations, and earning the respect of millions of people. One of the responses the Pope has had with the Muslim world, for example, has been exceptionally positive, because they know as a Jesuit he only got one pair of shoes. They're orthopedic, got a bad back. He's only got 3 sets of clothes, and he goes around in a Ford Focus. And they think he's a holy man. They think they see the likeness, the pattern of St. Francis and of holy men. And that's helped the interfaith dialogue enormously for the same kind of reason. Let me take you for a walk, icon by icon, if you will, through my experience in Rome, and then I'll make some observations about where we're up to theologically and ecumenically and officially, and then you might want to have a few questions as well. The Anglican Centre in Rome has been there since Michael Ramsey and Pope Paul VI agreed it should be there in the 1960s. They signed a kind of agreement at St. Paul's Basilica, the Papal Basilica outside the walls, where I think St. Paul is almost certainly buried. And they set up an embassy, if you will, between the Anglican Communion and the Holy See. That's where I was living and working nearly 5 years. And I'm showing you this next picture because in 2009 we got into a lot of difficulty. The start with Michael Ramsey and Pope Paul VI was hopeful. It was creating an ecumenical theological dialogue for the first time in 400 years. It defrosted some of our relationships historically, built a bridge. And then in 2009 we hit a wall. We've hit other little hurdles as well in previous years and have since. But in 2009 we hit our biggest wall. And that was, you can see the Archbishop of Canterbury, Ron Williams, on the left, and now Cardinal Nichols on the right, who was the Archbishop of Westminster, then, still is. And basically, a number of clergy in the Church of England, some in America, 1 or 2 in Australia, have decided to move across to become Roman Catholic clergy, and most of them were married. Neither Archbishop Rowan nor Archbishop Nichols knew much about it beforehand, and this photo was taken as the press confronts them. You can see the look on their faces. It's not a happy day. The Cardinal, or the Archbishop as he was then, is trying to explain why he hadn't been given a lot of notice, because it wasn't an ecumenical move, it was a pastoral accommodation. And the Archbishop of Canterbury is feeling quite concerned because he got precious little advice about it and didn't know that so many, well over in his case 100 priests were making this move. So it raised the question, can we trust each other? What do we have in common? What kind of partnership are we capable of? Because every relationship depends on a foundation of trust, transparency, communication, and speaking the truth in love. And so this was a difficult day. And there have been others at times, both ways, from both points of view. What do you do when this happens? And if we're honest, ecumenical partnerships hit this kind of brick wall occasionally, over something or another. Well, the only response a Christian can give to this kind of ecumenical challenge is, of course, to pray. There have been a number of occasions when Roman Catholics and Anglicans and Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, the whole gamut of the mainline Christian churches have prayed ecumenically. I'm sure you've done it in Melbourne for decades as well. But in the face of this kind of challenge, drawing closer to Christ in the hope that in spite of your tensions, you will thereby draw closer to each other. You imagine Christ is in the centre of your problem, the centre of the room. Praying in Christ, with Christ, to Christ, draws you closer to Christ. And if you're all doing that, you're all coming a little closer to each other. You think of the spiritual physics of that. This is an example here, you may not be able to see it very well, it's clearly St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, of Anglicans and Roman Catholics and Waldensians and Methodists and Lutherans praying evensong, the liturgy, the office we're just singing now, for the first time ever in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, at the altar of the papal chair, behind the great baldacchino, behind the great high altar of St. Peter's. The first time above ground, a Roman Catholic Anglican organised office of evensong, prayers we prayed this evening, together. And it's of enormous significance because in the face of difference and tension, when you do this, something happens. You leave this kind of office a little different. You see the problem from a slightly different perspective because you've been given a sense of perhaps a measure of wisdom, a slightly better, longer view, certainly a little more peaceful interior about it all. That helps you to meet each other better, and greet each other better, and talk to each other in a better way. There's in the far left, the Catholic Bishop, Brian Farrell, from the Ecumenical Department in the Vatican, and a couple of Anglican clergy in the middle. Then a procession with a woman verger. Women clergy were in the procession. We asked the Archpriest of the Basilica, who's a cardinal, whether or not it was appropriate to involve ordained women clergy. And he said, come and be who you are as the Anglican Communion. And so that happened. We made a procession from the office of evensong in the chapel of the altar of the chair to the tomb of St. Gregory the Great, Pope Gregory the Great, who is the Pope who sent a mission to England in 595 and created a Benedictine community at Canterbury, which later morphed into Canterbury Cathedral and the Shrine of Thomas a Becket, which is now the mother church of the Anglican Communion. And so we all went to his tomb. He's still there. And prayed. And that made a huge difference to the way we saw each other and the way we began talking about each other. And now I would say that the 2009 crisis around the Ordinariate is distant memory. And we're looking at new ways of collaboration and partnership. So there's the 66th moment when Pope Paul VI, without warning and as a complete surprise, took off his own patriarchal ring and placed it on Michael Ramsey's finger. We have the box in the Anglican Centre in Rome that housed that ring. To the end of his days, Michael Ramsey always became quite emotional when this moment was referred to. Extraordinary moment in time. In other words, they're saying to each other, after 400 years of silence or misunderstanding or misrepresentation, if Christ is in the centre of our relationship, as St. Paul and his writings in the New Testament, bearing in mind we're standing near his grave, what unites us is far greater than what divides us. There's the library in the Anglican Centre in Rome. It's an extraordinary collection of books. It's also the home of the Anglican Centre in Rome director. It's got a chapel, it's got seminar room, it's got 3 bedrooms for guests, and it's kind of a little embassy there, very close to the Pantheon. as an ongoing witness to this hope between Pope Paul VI and Michael Ramsey. It's got a chapel, St. Augustine of Canterbury, for obvious reasons, a large salone where we meet and greet and talk, all kinds of people come. It's kind of a Switzerland of the ecumenical world. Anyone can say anything about anything. And it's amazing how the truth sets you free when you say what you really think about issues and doctrine and each other. It's amazing the common ground you can find. Study in a little seminar room, people from all over the world. But behind it all, the current Pope and the current Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and His Holiness Pope Francis. And what's happening in this particular moment, as a kind of icon of hope for us all, is the Archbishop of Canterbury has taken off his own pictorial cross, which is the cross of nails facsimile from Coventry Cathedral. You know the story when the Luftwaffe bombed Coventry, the roof fell in, part of the cathedral was destroyed, and the Dean of Coventry found 2 charred nails in the debris on the floor in the shape of a cross. And he kept it ever after as a symbol, underneath which were the words, "Father, forgive." It's a sign of reconciliation, and there's a reconciliation unit at Coventry to this day, which seeks to bridge between enmity and difference and animosity. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was wearing a cross of nails. Took it off, placed it in the Pope's hand. Now, I was standing quite close to this action, and I saw something most people didn't see. Happened about a nanosecond after this shot was taken. The Pope took the cross and kissed it, and just gently pressed a little bit of the nail into his palm, and smiled at the Archbishop. We're on a cross-carrying pilgrimage towards hope, towards an Easter community where we all belong, but it will cost us, as it costed Christ. A very powerful moment indeed. And then the Pope put the cross around his neck, and still sometimes wears it. The Archbishop of Canterbury and Pope Francis met privately, one-to-one. I was there when they first met, and the Archbishop was then 58, the Pope was 79. And the Pope said to the Archbishop of Canterbury, "You realise I'm your older brother." And you could see the Archbishop thinking, well, of course you are. And then the Pope said, by 2 days, because the Pope was seated as the Bishop of Rome and Supreme Pontiff on a Tuesday, and the Archbishop of Canterbury was enthroned in Canterbury Cathedral on the Thursday of the same week. And that sent a signal to us all at the time that the Pope regarded the Archbishop of Canterbury as a brother in Christ. Isn't that extraordinary when you think about what that actually means? Is the Archbishop of Canterbury valid? He's a brother of a chief apostle. What does that mean? Extraordinary gesture. Then we, with the Pope's own hospitality, sitting in the middle, we're not going to see this, but this is an interfaith gathering from the main religions of the world in the Vatican because of Pope Francis's passion about slavery and trafficking, and Archbishop Justin's pledge to fight trafficking and slavery all over the world. They co-hosted with others, with an Australian philanthropist, Andrew Forrest, paying for most of it, an Anglican from Perth, an interfaith anti-slavery network declaration. The first time Muslims, Buddhists, members of the Jewish community, Orthodox, Anglican, Roman Catholic, Hindu, Shia and Sunni Muslims agreed to a common theological statement about the rights of people who are enslaved or trafficked. And it's centered on a theology of human dignity and human freedom and the right to liberation. It's the first time in the history of world religion when a specific cause of that kind has been agreed to theologically by world faiths who don't agree on some seminal theological points, but come together around a justice issue and a liberation issue and a peace issue. And that was of enormous significance. And prior to this, the Muslim world had mixed feelings about the Vatican and some aspects of the Anglican community, but on this day and since then, there's been a lot more collaboration. And also the fact that Shia and Sunni Muslims joined Hindus, members of the Jewish faith, Buddhists, in combined effort and cause was huge. This other one here is an example of the Pope, the Archbishop of Canterbury, members of world faiths in Assisi. The Pope has taken the name Francis from St. Francis of Assisi, praying for world peace and sending an unmistakable message, which they've done in Assisi twice before, that you cannot use religion, the name of God, to kill other people in large numbers. You may not use your faith to persecute and oppress. You may not claim and call upon the sacred things of your religion to damage other people and infringe human dignity. And that, once again, was of enormous significance to us all. One of the lovely things I think about the time when Archbishop Justin first met with the Pope, which led to some of these other ecumenical interfaith agreements, was that Donald Trump also had a similar one-to-one with the Pope for the same amount of time. You normally get about 15 minutes alone. And President Trump came into Rome. I was standing in the Via Conciliazione. He arrived with about 25 black Mercedes, and the Pope came in a small blue Ford Focus, handed him his encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si', knowing that the Paris talks would be a place of debate between the President of the United States and other countries, and the Vatican, and the Anglican Communion, over global warming and over our response to care of creation. Whatever your theory of global warming is, the Pope appealed through this encyclical, and also to Donald, to say, notwithstanding different agreements about how global warming emerges, we have a responsibility as stewards from Genesis to clean up our own backyards in the name of God, and to have dominion over the earth, whatever the reason for changes in the climate. And the President's people said to the Pope's people, America can't afford this. And the Vatican and ecumenical people replied, we don't believe America can afford not to. And so this kind of conversation around slavery, around peace, around the environment goes on all the time in ecumenical and interfaith circles, in Rome and in other places. Here's a lighter moment. This is the Pope sharing a joke with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and you can see the brotherly love is quite palpable on their faces, and this ability to see the humorous side of things. I saw papal humour a number of times. My first experience of that was I was sitting beside the Pope at a lunch in the Vatican in Santa Marta. I was very nervous. I never sat beside a Pope before, and my Italian is extremely limited. I've got road rage Italian, I've got latte Italian, I've got railway station Italian. But fortunately, the Pope speaks extremely simple Italian. But on this particular occasion, I had the benefit of a translator as well. And there was a bit of a silence at the lunch. And the Pope is known for trying to lighten things up and for simple humanity from that sandwich incident with this guy. So I thought, all right, well, I'll say something. Being a wild colonial boy from New Zealand, I thought I'll just tell him a little Kiwi joke. And hoped I'd get away with it. And basically it was that a papal dame had been my secretary in Hamilton, where I live in New Zealand. And she was lovely, she was saintly, she was in her 70s, she'd retired, but she helped me, Roman Catholic, helped me as an Anglican Bishop Secretary for an interim period. And it was her custom, she was a Croatian New Zealander, lovely woman, loved her to bits. But whenever I walked into the office, from her tradition, she stood up. She always stood up. I'd go out of the office and get a cup of coffee, come back, she'd stand up again. And I got used to this rather quickly. But my family gave me heaps of others. But anyway, then she retired again, and she was replaced by an extremely able professional IT whiz person in their 30s from Canada. And she was very, very assertive. And whenever she walked into the room, I stood up. I told the Pope this joke, and fortunately he laughed like a drain, and he said, I got one like that too. I wasn't sure if he was thinking about Bishop Ganswein or not, but anyway, he inherited a nickname that had been given to Pope Benedict as the German Shepherd. Anyway. So, this is an example of the Pope speaking to the primates of the Anglican Communion, which we didn't think was possible, partly because we weren't sure the primates would all come together. Not all of them did, but most of them did, during a difficult time in the life of the Anglican Communion. At about this time, we weren't sure whether some primates would remain in communion with other primates in the ecclesial sense, or whether some would split off entirely, given the issues we're processing around the world at the time. But the papal household, the ecumenical department in the Vatican, Lambeth Palace, the Anglican Centre in Rome, arranged for them all on the 50th anniversary of the Anglican Centre in Rome to meet. And here they are, just about to be presented, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope, with the latest Anglican Roman Catholic International Commission document, which I'll talk about in a minute. And what happened in that room was quite extraordinary, because although the primates in the room would have had some disagreements that look as big as the differences between Catholics and Anglicans, Roman Catholics and Anglicans, nevertheless, they found common cause in this moment and a measure of unity. It was quite an extraordinary moment in time. And as you know, no formal schism has been declared in the Anglican community by a province, by a primate. I reckon that the ministry of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope, as foci for unity, as successors of the apostles, as inheritors of an apostolic succession, were a living link with the heritage of the gospel itself, which made people say, the cause is bigger than our difference and our disagreement. Let's speak the truth in love. Let's observe a measure of unity in a measure of diversity. And that's more important, surely, than anything else, with Christ in the middle of this ring. Do you want to walk away from Christ in the centre of this community? So, a great moment of hope, I think. All through the time in Rome, different people came from different parts of the world. Africa, India, America. This is a terrifying moment. I had to give a talk about ecumenical vision, sort of thing I'm saying this evening, in front of the papal household in the Sistine Chapel, in front of an Anglican and Vatican combined choir. Extraordinarily terrifying. Look, Michelangelo's Last Judgment just behind you. Focus the mind a little bit. There's the Pope with some Anglican service. At that time, Tom Wright, Bishop Tom Wright, in the site, some people think, is the site of St. Paul's house arrest, underneath the Anglican Centre Director's bedroom, sort of at an angle, about 300 feet down. Tour groups from all over the world, pilgrims, students, learning, sharing, discussing deepening their faith. And then this extraordinary moment when what is thought to be the Crozier head of Pope Gregory the Great, remember the Pope who sent Augustine to England, which started the tradition that led to the Mother Church of the Anglican Communion, thought to be the Crozier head of Pope Gregory the Great, alongside the Gospels of St. Augustine. Putting them together again, if you will, as a symbol of hope. There's the Crozier head leaving Rome, being taken by an Australian Roman Catholic Columban father, Father Robert McCulloch, and my associate, Father Marcus Walker. It wasn't allowed on the cargo because it's beyond insurance value, so they gave it its own seat in the plane and its own glass of champagne. I don't know how that came to Canterbury Cathedral for the primates meeting, these same primates who were trying to build a measure of unity in diversity, and placed in the centre of that room when they were discussing division and tension within themselves. This is the taproot from which we all grew. Do you want to soar off the branch on which you're sitting? Was the message to the primates. Several primates had taxis with their motors running outside, believing they were going to leave. But they didn't. And there's the Pope giving the Archbishop of Canterbury a copy of the Crozier head of Gregory the Great on an episcopal staff for him to use as an apostle in the tradition and succession of the apostles. Think about that. He's holding up the Crozier head. That's the original, which one of the Vatican officials nearly accidentally gave to the Archbishop of Canterbury, but we retrieved it just in time. There's the Archbishop with it, with one of our great Jesuit friends, Professor Keith Peckler, Bishop David Hamid from the Diocese of Europe, and then Common Cause in Lampedusa with the Pope and the Diocese of Europe on refugee ministry through Sant'Egidio and evangelical church communities in Italy to house and repatriate or provide safe haven for people coming out of Aleppo and out of Syria, and then a cross made from boats which sank full of refugees as a sign of ecumenical pledge in the cause of justice and freedom, now placed on the Anglican Centre in Rome altar, and an agreement to work with Mediterranean Hope on refugee ministry together ecumenically. And so, a coalition against slavery and trafficking by all faiths, a willingness to listen, to learn from the taproots of our faith, to go back to the bedrock and start again. This is the bottom right, a German Lutheran choir singing in the Sistine Chapel on the month of the anniversary of the Reformation. Think about that. A German Lutheran choir singing in the Sistine Chapel in Rome on the month of the anniversary of the Reformation. I went to Erfurt, where Luther was a young Augustinian Catholic academic. And the Protestant churches and the Catholic churches in Erfurt, where he was a young teacher, have the highest regard for him. The Pope said he'd go to Lund to commemorate and celebrate the Reformation. What an extraordinarily generous and courageous thing to say. In other words, we need to learn from what has happened, but we also need to find our way back together in a kind of a unity and a diversity. And then one of the most terrifying moments of my life, in front of about 3,000 people, St. Paul's outside the walls, where Michael Ramsey was given that ring unexpectedly by Paul VI. The Pope, without warning, called me up, and an Orthodox Archbishop, to share the papal pontifical blessing. The first year he did that, it was just to make the sign of the cross. The second year he did that, he just pointed to the first paragraph in Italian. It said pontiff, and then it wasn't the actual blessing, it was the sentence before it, in Italian. Fortunately, my latte Italian got me through, and I said it, but you can see the terrified look on my face. Then after that service, he gave me a kiss on both cheeks and kissed this cross, which I haven't cleaned since. And so, conversation, building trust, building sisterly brotherly love, seeing what comes of that, because we're thinking, we're imagining, we're creating, we're thinking outside the square. Let me close the lecture presentation now with some theological points. I don't know what you think about someone asking you the question, do Anglicans and Roman Catholics have the same beliefs about the Mass, about the Eucharist, about Holy Communion, about the Lord's Supper? And if you ask quite a lot of people if they know anything about the Church, I bet about half of them would say no, they don't have the same beliefs about the Eucharist or the Mass or the Lord's Supper. But that's not true. The Anglican Roman Catholic International Commission, in its second phase, came to an agreement on the meaning of the Great Thanksgiving of the Eucharist. An agreement when they thought they couldn't. The Roman Catholic scholars, when they first met, alongside Charles Sherlock, by the way, who is a famous Anglican Australian scholar, and amongst others, the Roman Catholics thought that the Anglicans believed that the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, was just a memorial, a blast from the past, if you will, or something that you look back towards as having happened a long time ago, and you remember it out of sentiment, or you have a respect for it retrospectively, and you venerate it, but that's it. On the other hand, the Anglican scholars believed that the Roman Catholic position was that transubstantiation, the prayers of consecration over the bread and the wine, to some Roman Catholics meant the molecules changed in some way, in some mysterious way, in the bread and the wine. So there was a kind of a talking past each other. And you'd often hear people say, well, the Catholics think this and the Anglicans think this. But they decided to do what I've been trying to share this evening, as a commission, to pray together, with Christ in the centre of the room, and then to study the bedrock of their faith together, which is the Greek New Testament. And there in the Greek New Testament, when the first words of institution are recorded, first in Paul and then in the Gospels, particularly in Paul, the word anamnesis is used. Some people have translated that, do this as a memorial of me, which is the caricature of some Anglicans' positions. Others translated it differently, do this to remember me, but it's a sacrifice that somehow changed the molecules. This commission came to an agreement that anamnesis, in its original Greek term, meant neither of those things. It means, do this for the recalling of me. Recall. And if you call, I am there. A real presence, not a memory, not a molecular transaction, but a metaphysical, real presence, an ontological reality, a visceral event where the entire community is transubstantiated, if you will, and becomes the body of Christ. Becomes Christ's lifeblood in the world by sharing the common chalice. Real presence was back and agreed to by both parties, but in a new way, getting back to Christ in the centre, and those words that were handed on to St. Paul, that he handed on the night before he died, our Lord Jesus Christ. Do this for the recalling of me, fully, really, uniquely present in this celebration and this communal action. And so when we looked at other things where we imagined that we had radical difference, like Mary, for example, that wouldn't be the case in this church, but in some Anglican churches, there was a view that Mary was a kind of idolatry, or people were worshipping Mary. Some Anglicans believed that the Roman Catholic Church worshipped her. when the Commission got together, prayed, Christ in the centre of the room, looked at the original texts. They produced a document called Mary, Grace and Hope in Christ. And it rediscovered, for the Commission at least, that the Vatican had never taught officially that Mary was to be worshipped. Their words officially say veneration, reverence, adoration, as the first in the communion of saints, as the mother of the church, as the Theotokos, the God-bearer, the bearer of the Son of God. And in finding our way towards each other, a Methodist helped, of course, by a little book called 5 for Sorrow, 10 for Joy, when he looked at the Rosary and rediscovered it as a way of praying your way through Luke's Gospel, and the message of the Archangel, and the message of Mary and Elizabeth. Hail Mary, full of grace, the words of the Archangel in Luke. The Lord is with you, blessed are you amongst women, blessed is that's Mary and Elizabeth, the combination of those two things. It's a scriptural form of reverence and veneration, which every Christian can receive and enjoy. And then, on the tricky matter of authority, how do you make decisions across the world? How do you look at Christian leaders and their teaching and their leadership and their guidance? Surely, some Anglicans would have thought the Pope is infallible. The Commission gets together, the Commission prays, Christ in the centre of the room, they do their homework, and they come up with a still controversial, bumpy book, but it's in transition and being edited as we speak, called The Gift of Authority, which basically says the Roman Catholic agreement and Anglican agreement together that the Bishop of Rome does base his office on the life and work of St. Peter, whose faith is a rock, whose person is a rock, both faith and person is a rock, chosen by Christ, first of the bishops of Rome. And one day, by God's grace, we will find our way into a communion with him. In the meantime, we regard every form of gathering of Christians to make decisions as a holy moment, so that the Roman Catholic Church is now experimenting with synods, serious synods, hugely prepared synods. Synod on the Family in Rome was an extraordinary moment of their way, of finding their way into the canvassing of the whole Catholic world. Anyone could write in and express it. It took months to settle the documents. Of course, very few lay people, very few women. An Anglican synod has lots of lay people and lots of women. But it's a step in the right direction, as our interest in a reformed papacy is a step in the right direction. What we want is technically called a kind of a Cyprianic papacy, that is to say, a bishop of Rome who presides in love, who's a focus for unity, who's a primus inter pares, that is to say, first among equals, where councils of the church, ecumenical councils, are taken very seriously as high-ranking decision-making bodies, like the Anglican Consultative Council on a good day, and councils of Catholic bishops on a good day. Now, we're nowhere near agreeing on what authority will mean. We're probably a century away from this kind of interdependence and this kind of, but in the meantime, on the ground, the Pope said to us, why don't we behave as if we're one anyway? In Argentina, when he was the Archbishop, he referred in an Anglican church in Rome, the first time the Pope has ever been to an Anglican parish church. He said, when I was in Argentina, there was a hill tribe of indigenous people, way, way in the mountains. And the Catholic priest got there 4 times a year, Anglican got there 4 times a year, and in between they had kind of lay reader support. And he said in front of 4 cardinals and the congregation for the doctrine of the faith, everybody went to everybody else's Sunday morning service. And he said, the Vatican knows about this. I come from a part of the world where the island of Rarotonga, the Cook Islands, one of the few places in the world where all the Anglicans on Rarotonga go to the Catholic Mass every Sunday and receive the bread and wine because there is no Anglican priest present. And the rules say if there's no Anglican priest present, and the Anglicans and Roman Catholics have agreed on the meaning of the Great Thanksgiving, which we have, you may share the Mass if there's no Anglican priest present. These kind of inches, these kind of incremental changes go on all the time. If you look 50 years ago, none of this would have been even conceivable. And so I say to you this evening in conclusion, the point of the lecture is that God walks through history, a decade at a stride. And God is marching forward. Let's walk with God. Let's walk with God and see where God takes us. Got an Archbishop of Canterbury and a Pope who believe that with all their heart. What unites us is greater than what divides us. I'll pause there and ask if you may have one or two questions. Are some of the differences between us both ways as much cultural as they are theological? And I think there's always a cultural element, there always is. We had a joke with the Jesuits in Rome which went something like, well, you can worship God in your way, and I'll worship God in his way. That joke exposes the fact that we have our own frame, and we are conditioned by our heritage and that's why praying together is so important, because it does lower the barrier and develop common custom. In New Zealand now we celebrate Ash Wednesday together. It's non-Eucharistic. The imposition of ashes is always together. And we share the Advent wreath exchange quite often in New Zealand now. And building up common cause. For Anglicans helping out Society of St Vincent de Paul. That kind of thing is, I was talking to Charles Sherlock today, and he's the treasurer of a Catholic opportunity shop where he lives. That kind of cross-pollination, building up a common language, I think is so helpful. And let me give you a terribly moving example which involves you as much as it involves me. And you'll know the story perhaps better than I do. During World War II, Australian members of religious orders and clergy and laity, teachers in Papua New Guinea were given the opportunity of coming home and with an imminent invasion. As you know, some of them decided to stay because they couldn't bear the thought of leaving the hospital or the school or the parish and their friends, and so some stayed. And many of them were beheaded as the invasion began, the martyrs of Papua New Guinea. Some of them, Catholic and Anglican, side by side. And we used to say in Rome, at that moment, the blood of the martyrs was not only the seed of the church, but the sign of the church. And the Pope has since referred to an ecumenism of blood. In other words, underneath it all, at the end of the day, when you get down to it, when it's being Christian together, there's a unity which is more than cultural and deeper than dogma. And that witness is still remembered to this day. I'm sure you know of this commemoration. And in Papua New Guinea, it's the one place in the world where Anglicans and Roman Catholics are most collaborative, partly because of this experience. So I think we do need more common cause, we do need more prayer, we do need to melt some of the cultural distinctions, and and to believe and trust that God wants that and is walking with and for that. Yes.
Thank you for your talk. What do you think the chance of women being ordained as deacons in the Catholic Church?
The question is, what are the chances, I think, of women being ordained as deacons in the Catholic Church? Well, that's very close to my heart, because one of the women on the commission that the Pope created to look at the ordination of women to the diaconate came to the Anglican Centre in Rome to have a discussion with an English bishop who was a specialist on ordinals and liturgy. He helped shape the Church of England prayer and is a highly regarded scholar in this area. She came to talk with him about early ordination rites in the deposit of faith itself. And they agreed, David and this woman scholar on the commission, on the Pope's commission, that there is evidence of women and men being ordained to the diaconate. You think of that early trajectory from Phoebe and Dorcas, for example. And so they were going back to say to the Pope, ordination to the diaconate, which the Orthodox at that stage had just agreed to in Alexandria, which is very important to Rome. I mean, they want to keep that rapprochement. That she would be recommending that he do that. He's taking his time, quite understandably, and consulting. It won't happen quickly. I don't know whether it will happen. But I do know there was a biblical commission, a pontifical commission, that looked at this question 20 years ago and had Henry Wansbrough on it, the editor of the New Jerusalem Bible, Benedictine monk from Hinckleford, wonderful scholar. He was on Archive 3 with me. And he said, on that pontifical commission, looking at are there biblical objections to the ordination of women to the diaconate? And he came back as the biblical scholar on that commission saying he couldn't find an objection to the diaconate. So we will see. We will see.
Thank you very much, Archbishop. I really enjoyed what you had to say. And I know the focus was on the Roman Catholic Church, and it's really wonderful to hear of those small steps, one at a time, as we move forward. I'm just thinking about the situation in our own church, in the Anglican Communion, and speaking as a member of the Doctrine Commission in this country, just how difficult it is to get that sense of unity and diversity that you mentioned. Because we, of all churches, have got, in many ways, the breadth of Christendom within us, theologically and liturgically. So how do you think we can manage that as we work on our relationship with Rome, which need continue? We also need to be looking on our relationship within and among ourselves. So how do you think we can actually move to an appreciation of unity within diversity and hold together the unity of our church? So I'm thinking of, your country and also ours at the moment.
Well, I think it works both ways. I think a bit of success within ecumenical dialogue helps you with a bit of success internally to your own communion. For example, that Primus meeting with the Pope. There's a kind of a sense of we belong to something that's worldwide, that's ancient, that's got a huge amount of diversity in it anyway. Why don't we just get along a bit more than we have? Just at a meeting like that. And so I think practicing with ecumenism helps internal dissension within the Anglican community. What's the really big picture? What's really at stake? What's the heart of the matter? And getting down to that rather than letting what divides us be greater than what unites us. And you've got to practice that. You've got to lower your own paranoia. You've got to center your heart. You've got to quieten your mind. Look at the scholarship. Look at the documents. And there's one lovely example of a cardinal who, in Rome, celebrating Mass near the papal tombs. And there were some Anglicans near in the congregation, and he beckoned to them to come forward and receive the Mass, which appears to be a breach of the rules, unless there's no Anglican priest present, as I was saying earlier. And someone said to him afterwards, Your Eminence, the rules say we shouldn't be offered the Mass because the Anglican priest and the Anglican church are just 20 minutes away in Balwino Street. And he said, that's another country. It's another country. Which it is. The Vatican City State ends about 500 yards before the Anglican parish. But there's a sense of grace and a sense of moving the boundaries gently and lovingly and graciously without betraying who you are. And I think we'd be surprised how much we can rediscover about each other.
Brothers and sisters, I think we've been given a feast with so much love and eternity as well. So it's been a great deal to have you here, and you can